So this will be my first video with subtitles in the 2 languages, so you can do your learning a little bit easier by reading some of the subtitles there in case you do miss some of the voiceover. This is obviously the product straight out of package. There is no modifications. It is a really nicely designed and engineered product. It does have several flaws, but we're not going to get into that. This video is not about that. It is about making modifications. There is a blast effect made of acrylic that comes with this figure. It is very cool looking, but it's also very heavy, and the articulation on that shoulder barely supports the weight of that acrylic plastic. It is best to remove it or replace it with, in this case, an LED light, and it has more impact than that piece of acrylic. I'm still going to hold on to it because it'll come useful. It is pretty cool looking. So let me do a small recap to start with of the products or materials needed for the lighting effects. And you can get this off of Amazon through Brixmax. You're going to need the flicker board, you're going to need a standard board, which is going to be for the power, 6 ice blue LEDs, and 1 pulsing red LED, and 1 connecting wire to hook up those 2 boards. So let's get started with illuminating the head. This is the first process in this project, and it is the same basis as using fiber optics. The light will pass through the clear acrylic or plastic. In this case, you're going to perforate the cranium underneath the white plastic, as you see here with the hand drill, and you want to reach that blue plug. The blue acrylic will not come off the head because of that blue plug. It is really firmly attached, and there's no need to remove it. It's best to drill and attach the LED, and because the LED has enough power to it, it will actually illuminate the entire cranium or that blue plastic as if you actually lit it directly from inside. Well, you are reaching it from the inside, but you're not drilling into the actual acrylic. You're only drilling into the white plastic that is part of the skull. So that is the continuous basis for all of the connections on the acrylic pieces that are on the figure. Let's go to the eye. It's the same step. It is a white plastic that's underneath there. We're going to drill with the smallest drill bit that we have, and then perforate all the way through and make sure it is a clean perforation. In the end, you can cover that in with a UV resin in a red tint, and that way you will have a red bulb there. If you don't have the UV resin, don't worry about it. The LED diode that shows through will be sufficient, and it will still obviously be very bright, and you're not going to notice a big difference unless you hold it up to your face and you'll see that it is a empty hole. But it will look that much nicer if you fill it in with a red tinted UV resin so that it looks like an actual bulb. So let's move on. Our second step here is then to test out our lighting. We want to make sure that it is working properly. And by the way, just remember that it is very soft plastic and it is very easily to damage it. So you want to make sure you take your time and be careful not to extend the size of that perforation. You want to use the smallest drill bit and just make sure it's clean. Once inside that cranium, you want to attach your LED. I attached it with UV resin so that it doesn't fall off easily, and because the UV resin is clear, it adheres really well. And look how bright it is just by one single LED. It lights the entire acrylic that's on the head. It's the same basis for the eye. Reattach it Cover up any light leaks using your epoxy sculpt or any other material that you may have on hand that you consider that is adequate for this. Covering up those light leaks not only on the eye, but on the piece that's hitting the cranium on the inside, the blue acrylic. Now you're not going to be able to cover the red that's on top because that is going through that white plastic that you are not able to get to. Let this dry completely before you do any other work. That means probably leaving it overnight. If you have a hair dryer and you want to speed up the process, that's fine. The only downside is this is a very soft plastic and you can deform it if you're not careful. It's just best to let it air dry and it will be just fine. You can continue working on it later. So it's not going to be a 20-minute process like the video is. It's a little bit longer than that. So you make sure you repeat the same step for the skull as you did for the eye so that you can have a nice clean look on your figure. Don't cover up those light leaks, this is what you're going to get, and this is what you want to avoid. You want to avoid this result, and the way to do it, again, is to cover up those light leaks with the epoxy so that it looks nice and clean. Now it's time to drill into the neck through all the way to the torso. Now, once you pass your wires through, or I should say before you pass your wires through, cut a small channel for those wires to rest up against at the back of the neck, right at the base, as far as you can into the neck. That will keep them from being pinched. Always keep that hair dryer close by because you're going to have to reheat the plastic to reattach everything. Forcing it could damage your work on the wiring that you are doing, and you'll have to start from scratch by replacing some of those or fixing them. You don't want to do that. Avoid it at all costs. The torso you're working on should now look like this. If it does not, go back through the first steps and find out which of those you missed. Now, as far as the shoulders, it's time to drill at the edge near the socket. Why? Because this is where we're going to put in the LED, putting it facing into the acrylic so that it's not causing a hot spot at the top where the plug is. You actually can drill through this white into the plug, but if you're doing action figure photography, it's going to cause a problem with being a hot spot. So it is best to hide the LED upside down like this, facing into the acrylic plastic, and that will actually transmit the light all over, causing a soft glow instead of a harsh light. You can then attach this either with glue or UV resin, preferably. Now, once you've attached your light and it is adjusted and fixed in place, then you can cover up those perforations and the actual LED with some epoxy sculpt, or you can actually opt for using UV resin because it is transparent. That way you can build up the structure back to what it was and even more hide that LED. The wire will then fold over and go into the socket joint. It will not be visible unless you lift up the arm and look at the actual wire underneath it. But as a full-on and straight-on shot, you're not going to be seeing it. Make sure that your epoxy or resin, whichever you're using, is completely dry before you continue working on the figure or on this particular part of the figure. And that may require some hours of dry time or using a hair dryer for an extended period of time. It should look just like this. Test out your lights. If it does not light up, then there's a step you missed or you have a pinched wire somewhere. Let's drill the arm just under the blue acrylic, avoiding having any debris to fall on the inside. And be careful, it is very soft plastic. And just remember that any scuff marks can be painted later. At this point, you want to avoid dropping any debris on the inside because it's going to be impossible to take it out. Make sure you drill from the top of the arm into the elbow. Make sure that peg has the socket facing into the shoulder socket. If it's not, you will be drilling in the wrong spot. Insert the LED to make sure it passes through cleanly. If it snags anywhere, you're going to have to clean it out with the drill bit and just turn it manually and clean it out so that you can have the wire slide through without any snags. Pass the LED facing into the acrylic. So the actual diode will be facing up. It will be upside down, facing you, facing up into the blue acrylic to light up that acrylic piece. And then just repeat the same for the opposite side. Any exposed wires that you may see at this point can then later be filled with epoxy and sanded down and repainted once you have fully assembled this portion of the figure. Test your lights. Your work should look just like this. If it does not illuminate like this, then you have missed a step somewhere. Go back and repeat some of those steps. Check your work. Link up all of your boards. Well, there should only be 2 boards, but link up all of your wiring and make sure it lights up just like this. The camera doesn't pick up the true lighting, so you will see a brighter result in hand. So choose one arm, heat the plastic and remove the peg. We'll get back to the peg a little later. We are now going to drill into the forearm from the wrist side all the way into the elbow. Again, make sure it is a clean perforation. Then you will cut a small channel on the inside, and that will be for the wire to rest on so that it is not hinged. Now once you have perforated the elbow from the forearm side, then pass your wire through, make sure there are no snags and that it is a clean insert of that wire. We are now going to work on the peg. I wasn't able to record the whole thing because I forgot I wasn't recording. Now, take a look at the next clip because it shows you what that peg will now look like. You are going to drill into the top of the peg and use UV resin to adhere the diode to the end. cut a slot on the edge of the peg and used UV resin to then adhere the wire in that channel. This is what the hand will now slide over. You may have to sand the inside of the hand so that it fits snug and does not fit tight. If it's tight, it will damage the wire. Make sure it only fits snug. Now, that accessory is the same thing. You'll have to do that. Before we go on to that, let's reattach the entire forearm to the shoulder. Make sure your wires are on the same direction as the wire that's coming through going into the socket. Assemble the arm and reconnect all of your wires. Now, before connecting to the actual socket joint, we want to add some more density, or actually another layer of acrylic to the actual ball joint, because the weight of that accessory is too heavy and these joints are very weak. So this will strengthen the joint in the shoulder so that it can actually lift up the arm and stay in place. They actually pop off really easy, and by doing this, it'll be just that, giving us a tighter, firm connection in that socket. Now, once you've connected the ball joint on the inside, you should be able to see if it's pinching or not. If the light does not go on, it is pinched. Make sure it is in that channel that you cut so that it does not get pinched. You will have to heat up your plastic and reattach it carefully. Now, the same thing for the accessory. If you want to use that heavy acrylic, you will have to clean out the inside so that it does not fit tight. You want it to fit snug. The blast accessory is too tight, sand the inside to fit it nice and snug. I did the same thing for the blue acrylic because I wanted to remove easily and attach easily. And right now, it is incredibly tight. I don't want that. So I actually sanded down the edge of the blue acrylic. So it is time to assemble the arm into the socket. Now, the arm that has the cannon has actually 3 wires, one shorter than the other, the shortest one going to the actual cannon effect. Feed them into the socket all the way into the chest cavity. Do the same for the opposite side. Once you've passed the wires through into the chest cavity, reconnect all of your wiring to your constant board and your flicker board, depending on what lights you want to do what effect. And then do another light test. Attach your cannon effect or blast effect to make sure that it fits snug, not tight, and that is actually illuminating. And this is in case you actually want to use this accessory. With the actual light inside the blaster, you really don't need the blast effect. Now it's time to install the actual boards in their place inside this cavity. On the inside we have 2 notches. And you want to avoid cutting the outside wall because you'll pierce through it. Stay on the inside of the notch, pick one, do not cut into the outer wall. Only cut it enough for that flicker board to fit on the inside along with the wires that it's attached to. The second board will actually fit along the back horizontally. Place the flicker board into that notch that you cut. make sure that it goes as low as possible so that it is not seen from the front and that it has space for the torso we're going to attach to it. The second board will fit horizontal along the back. Now coil the excess cables and reattach to the power board. Now take a grinder and grind off about 1/16 of an inch. Sand it and paint it. That'll give us enough room for the wiring in the torso. This should be your end result. If it does not look like this, go back through a few of those steps and find out what you missed and then make those corrections. Fill the elbows with epoxy and paint them. It's ready for show. This is one recap very quick of the items that are needed. Make sure you have a flicker board. Make sure you have a standard board for power. 6 ice blue LEDs, 1 self-pulsing red LED, and 1 connecting wire for those 2 boards. The rest is up to you. Where to get these? Remember, very easy. You can go on Amazon, look up Bricks Max LED for Legos, and buy them from there. I'm going to leave you with some video. I hope you liked the tutorial. If you do, please leave a like, comment, any questions, and of course, please subscribe. Let's get this channel going. To those that have helped out, I thank you very much, and let's keep customizing. Enjoy the rest of the video. Si te gustó este tutorial con los subtítulos en español, déjalo saber en los comentarios abajo para saber si continuar con este formato o cambiarlo, adjunto con cualquier otra pregunta que tengas. Y claro, no se te olvide poner un like, compartirlo y si en realidad te gusta, haz una suscripción para continuar con este material para el público latino. Los dejo con el resto de este segmento para que lo disfruten y no se les olvide continuar modificando esas figuras.